Diane, I think you're back up again.
Actually, Anna is going to do the first part.
Yes, just a couple quick smaller updates about the Office of Broadband Development. One is just on our bi-weekly e-blasts, so they're still going out and will be through the summer, such as every other week. Always open to suggestions on what to cover or different stories to highlight, but generally we have been focusing just on OBD-specific news and updates. So if you haven't signed up for those, you're able to sign up on the website. The other thing, just mentioning quickly, is that we wrapped up our April webinar series, which was the Broadband Development Tuesday Training Series, Permitting Land Use in State Systems. That is completed and posted and recorded alongside the materials through the Office of Broadband Development website. So if anyone's interested in watching that, it's available. In total, there were 4 different presentation sessions, and each one featured a different state agency who were able to provide some feedback and advice for broadband grantees and some information on the agency itself and kind of how they worked in broadband. In total, there were over 275 attendees over the course of the day. Again, this is all available online if anyone is interested. But I'll pass it over to you, Diane, unless there's any questions on that.
Okay, well, thanks, Anna. Well, as usual, we do have a new employee starting next week, so probably you'll get to meet him at the next meeting. It's a financial person that's going to help us with the additional financial reporting requirements associated with receiving the federal funds, so to some extent the capital projects funding, but largely for the upcoming BEAD funding. Other updates. Now that the 2024 construction season has started, it's exciting when driving around the state to see so much broadband construction in progress. Much of it from border-to-border, low density, and line extension. In fact, I just passed 2 Arling trucks in Melrose when I was coming here this morning. There are also some groundbreaking events occurring at annual meetings, and we've been getting invitations to some of those, so we're trying to do our best to get to those when we can. Connected Nation, our mapping vendor who also does field validation of our projects as they're wrapping up, and speed testing is in the state this week to validate some of the projects. Round 7, and I think I might even, anyway, so when they come, they drive the route of the project, and then they'll do a speed test to make sure it's delivering the speeds that the grant funded. And then we'll also have our grant staff going out doing field visits this summer. We do annual site visits to projects in progress. That's part of the grant management practice. So that now that there's no snow, cross your fingers, it's done. We'll be out and about through October checking out those projects and meeting with the grantees. We've also made the round 2 line extension awards, and the round 3 list of addresses is in the challenge process now, and that list should be going out for bid in a couple of weeks. And that program right now is funded with ARPA capital projects funds. So I think we awarded about $4 million round 1, I think a little over 3, so that's a little over 7, and we have a $15 million budget from capital projects funds for that. And then our round 10 grant applications came in last Friday. We had 40 for the border-to-border program, and those 40 applications are requesting funding totaling $47 million, and we have $30 million in state funding for the program this round. And then we also had 28 low-density applications, and those 28 applications are requesting $79 million, and we have $20 million for that program. And so currently we're in the intake and review process. The state challenge process provides the office with 3 business days for the maps to be posted, and if you checked your email, that email went out this morning that the projects that were applied for are posted and up on the maps. You can see where those are. If you are a provider that might serve in some of those areas, the challenge process is open until June 14th at 4 p.m. to challenge that you already serve there with wired service, or you have plans to deploy there in the next 18 months. And then on the legislative front, that's where Bree is now. The conference committee met yesterday. They're meeting today. and so she is up at the legislature. So they're in conference committee, so there's compromises being made back and forth on some of the language that's out there. We do have a bill, I think that's pretty solid, part of that, I forget what it's a big omnibus, but it's ag and broadband, and I think there's something else in there, where it gives us the ability to spend the digital equity money coming from IIJA, and then it'll give the infrastructure side the ability to move $5 million between programs. So, for example, if we weren't seeing a lot of line extension applications, we could move that funding again if Treasury approves it, because that has to be spent by December 31st of 2026. We could move that like into low density because that program is in such high demand. If we felt there were projects that should be funded, we will have that ability to move $5 million between border to border, low density, and line extension if that bill passes. So, any questions?
Questions for Diane? I think Bree's on, so bill is Senate Bill 4942. That was the one. Bree, I see you're on. Any comments or anything else you'd like to add? Maybe not in that position to talk. All right, moving on to the next topic. That would be the statewide fellowship model. So we were supposed to have individuals from Lead for America and American Connection Corps. Got a little bit of an update on American Connection Corps last time, but there's this fellowship model at the state level that was mentioned last time, but wanted to do a little bit of a double click there. That said, I don't think I see Rebecca or Tyler on yet. Taylor.
After our last meeting, I had a really good conversation with them, and we are trying to get a AmeriCorps volunteer for our nonprofit.
Okay.
But we need $10,000.
Yeah, we can talk more through that. So one of the discussions here, I just see that Rebecca just joined, is the how can the state have a model? Like there are areas where the state has worked with American Connection Corps or Lead for America. So like that's the idea, like how that might work.
Oh.
And what that looks like. So I think that could be interesting. So good morning, Rebecca. I see that you're on.
Yes, hello.
How are you today?
I'm well. It is a beautiful, cloudy day here in Nebraska. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So we're running a little bit ahead of time, so 5 minutes. So happy to stall for 5 minutes if you need, or we can go ahead and get started. Up to you. I know we're also probably waiting for Taylor, right?
Yes, we are waiting for Taylor. I would like to wait for him if that's okay.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Yep.
Do I have permission to share my screen?
You absolutely can. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
Do you want to do the subgroup discussion stuff first?
Yeah. So while she's bringing that up, and we can start the subgroups. So subgroups, I didn't have too much on that. The idea was because we were talking about bills and all that stuff was going on, and then we sort of created an impromptu subgroup. So we're kind of moving from that. So going back to so what we should do is go back to the subgroups we had before. So my nudge was really between now and the meeting we have in June is to see if the subgroups can have one more meeting amongst, and then start talking about specifically. I think what would be interesting is, are there specific topics that we should bring up to discuss here at the task force, right? Speakers that we need to have here, folks you'd want to hear from, just based on some of the initial formulations of what we want to think about recommendations for next year. And then obviously starting in July, we'll switch to let's start putting some recommendations in place, which will also come with what's the current states, what's the current situation, types of the thing. And then obviously we'll work with Anna particularly to kind of help kind of put all that together. But between now and June, I think the ask is if you can have one meeting, doesn't have to be very long, specific speakers or topics you want to hear. That may not necessarily happen in June. It may happen in the next couple of months, but it does take time to get people lined up and schedules cleared and all those kind of things. So the more we can give me a heads up on that, the more we can get it. Any questions on subgroups or anybody else has on that, or questions you might have on it? All right. I also see that Taylor, you're on now, which is exciting. So it's cool. We're running a little bit ahead of time. So
yes, we are here.
All right. Good morning. Well, good to have you again. And I know we want to double click a little bit on this sort of statewide fellowship model. What does that look like? That really helps us a little bit, kind of from a recommendation formulation back to the governor and the legislation next year. So with that, we figured we'd do a little bit of a more in-depth discussion on that piece of it. So with that, I'll turn it over to you. Maybe you could start with quick re-intros of yourself and Rebecca, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, great. Appreciate you all having us. Good to see some of you again. For those who I didn't meet last time, I'm Taylor Stuckert. I'm the Executive Director of the American Connection Corps, and I have Becky Johnson here with us. She's our lead program officer at ACC. Again, appreciate the invitation. I think we'll kind of run through these slides pretty quickly so we can get to discussion. We do have some sort of high-level review slides that we'll go over again, just in case there were those who weren't here last time when we presented. We could talk a little bit about what we do, how we do it, and what kind of sets us apart. And then we'll get into the state partnership model. So, with that, I'll just sort of the high-level introduction to ACC. American Connection Corps, we're a national nonprofit AmeriCorps program focused on connecting people to places and possibilities in digitally disconnected communities across America. So we do this through serving shoulder to shoulder with local partners on the ground. We often like to say that we are nationally scaled but locally focused. So all of our members are working with nonprofits or public agencies. There's going to be city governments, county, regional planning commission, state broadband offices, but they're really focused on supporting ongoing initiatives on the ground. There are no independent ACC members out there kind of working on their own. Our geography is expanding. So this past year, we grew from serving 14 states to 28 and about 50 members to 95. And really, this is just the beginning. We'll touch a little bit later on, but we're receiving quite a bit of demand as we continue to build partnerships and relationships such as this to continue to grow the core. So just real quick, I think I talked about this last time, but ACC over the past couple of years has really demonstrated significant impact in the communities that we serve. A lot of our members, we started in 2021. So you'll see on the next slide that a lot of our work really has been primarily focused on bridging the digital divide. And that can sort of occur in a variety of different ways, from supporting host site partners on issues around broadband availability. So getting grant dollars to communities, building public-private partnerships, really just providing that capacity. And as you can see, in the program so far, 91% of our host sites have mentioned that they would not have had the capacity to do the work that our ACC members did without that support. So that's something that really excites us. And then we go to the next slide, Becky, and you want to talk about Minnesota in particular?
Yeah. So that was the national scope of the impact that we've been able to make in our few years together as an ACC program. I just wanted to take and narrow that a little bit more to Minnesota specifically. And I do apologize if any of you were at the Connecting One Minnesota Broadband Conference. Some of this information may be redundant, but it's good to highlight it again. So since the program started, Lead for America, Lead for Minnesota, ACC, we've placed 22 members in Minnesota to do capacity building work that has served about 40 counties or communities in Minnesota. Those folks have been able to leverage $12 million for broadband expansion efforts, community development efforts, things like that. And then my favorite number there is 90% of our alumni have stayed in Minnesota after their term of service. And a great example of that is Amber here. She served in Duluth with an organization called Northspan, and she worked on connecting communities. Here are a few other great examples of what our ACC members do: mobilizing resources, creating public-private partnerships, and a lot of folks are connecting households to new infrastructure. We have Oliver. He served here in Nebraska with me, and he did some amazing work creating public-private partnerships, around $10 million to, this says 1,000, but I think it's actually closer to 2,000 unserved or underserved households in southeast Nebraska. Patrick in Redwood County, Minnesota, did very much the same. Bringing high-speed internet to 2,400 residents unserved previously in Redwood County. A few other great examples from different components of digital inclusion. We have Katie Herbert. She served in Illinois, and her community was a little bit further along with the broadband expansion piece. So she was helping folks with the adoption and the skilling, and she did classes for seniors, got into the school district, and kind of really just helped with that, bringing the internet and using it successfully. And then Kathy, another great example of a program. She started a program for seniors. She had students ranging from 65 to 96 in her lab-style classroom. Devices were donated. It's just a really cool story. She's got a great story about that 96-year-old who now is like managing her church's bulletin process, and I just think that's amazing considering the age and the amount of knowledge that she's gained.
Yeah, and so, we talk a lot about sort of the short-term impact. During the service year, our members are providing that capacity, the human resource need for a lot of these communities. But there's also kind of a longer-term impact that we see value in our program to provide these communities, which is really just building that network of civic leaders who serve alongside a very diverse range of folks from across the country. And so it enables us to really activate talent in communities and expose them to other perspectives, other individuals across the country in different types of communities, and continue to build, a well-informed and diverse civic sector leadership group. So, then the next slide, one of the things that we talked about, I know with some of you, but we know that the digital divide isn't exclusively just about broadband availability. It really hits a lot of different areas of our communities, even where there is broadband. So it's affordability, it's literacy, it's devices, hardware, but it also crosses other sectors. And so, this year we've really been expanding our focus to lean into the intersectionality of where the digital divide is impacting other sectors and communities. So we have these three program areas: community and economic development, health and social capital, and agriculture and natural resources, where we have members who maybe aren't primarily focused on going door to door, previously on ACP enrollment or grants that are focused on broadband infrastructure, but might be supporting areas around telehealth, or leveraging digital technologies to advance agriculture and natural resource needs in the community. So we have several examples of members who are kind of serving at that intersection over the next several slides.
Yeah, for just a couple examples here, I'll share. This is Sydney. She is serving with the University of Florida Extension in her home county of Holmes County, Florida. Working on agricultural and natural resources in that intersection. She's focusing on agritourism, which is big in a lot of rural communities, and improving agricultural practices. This is Tim. Some of you may have met him at the conference or in other interactions. Tim is an interesting story. He actually is a retired person and came back to his home community after serving many years as the executive director for the Minnesota Corn Growers Association. Came back and decided he wasn't done yet, and he wanted to find a way to give back to his community. So he enrolled as a member in the fall and has been doing just some tremendous work. Device distributions, e-waste cleanup, expansion of broadband access, all great things up in Coaching County. And this is JJ. He has a health and social capital focus. His work is in Des Moines with an organization called Cultural. JJ is a member of the Sikh community, and what he does is he has a digital storytelling project where he brings together people from different backgrounds and lets them tell their story and find commonality and common ground. He's actually working with a Quaker school right now in a smaller community in Iowa to do just that, to kind of bring people together and learn about each other through digital means. And this is Nasai. She is working in agriculture and natural resources, helping her host site, Tree Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, sorry about that, coordinate and work on conservation for, our forested areas, and doing that with a data-driven approach.
So, we touched on this probably last time, but, I think it's just good to sort of reemphasize what sets us apart from, other AmeriCorps programs. The first is the living expenses. So we provide a stipend that's probably near double a typical AmeriCorps program of $33,000. And the reason we do that, one, it helps with recruitment and retention rates. We want members who can afford to stay and service throughout the year, but it also helps us broaden our representation of our Corps. As you saw in those examples, we are an intergenerational Corps. We believe that a lot of our communities have talent already in place. We focus on local recruitment. And so one of the ways we're able to do that is by providing more to our members to enable folks who may not be able to do a traditional AmeriCorps program because the pay may be so low. It enables us to recruit members who maybe are caregivers or are contributing to household expenses and not exclusively just young folks who might be living at home. So we also provide healthcare, childcare support, training and travel. This is something also that really sets us apart. We spend about $10,000 a member investing in their training and development, bringing them together a few times a year. I think Becky will talk a little bit about that next, but we also have the education award that all AmeriCorps programs have, which is nearly $8,000 that goes towards their education. They can use that for traditional four-year schools. They can use it for other training, certification type opportunities. And if they're older adults, they can pass it to their children or grandchildren. So it's really an impactful way to give back to the members. And as I mentioned, all of this is about overcoming barriers to service and getting broader representation in our Corps.
Yeah, you guys might recognize this setting. This is from our December retreat in Minneapolis. We've been there the last 2 years. And this is the Land O'Lakes headquarters. This is our cohort currently. As Taylor mentioned, we bring people together to do training, to do networking, to do career development, and also just to share resources that they can take back to their communities that they're serving in. This is a photo from the NDIA, National Digital Inclusion Alliance, Net Inclusion Conference in Philadelphia. We brought almost all of our cohort there, and it was a great opportunity. We got to feel the love there too. And again, lots of great opportunities, lots of great knowledge share that comes to the member that they bring back to their community. That might be kind of hard for a small organization to send a person at this level normally.
Yeah, and just kind of bringing it back to the national scale, local focus. I'm sure many of you have seen this in your work on the digital divide, but so much of the work that's needed is really through that one-to-one experience, helping folks on an individual level, expand their digital literacy so that they can make doctor's appointments online, they can apply for jobs, they can get access to educational resources. There's been a ton of progress and work, and there's still a lot more needed to be done on broadband availability and infrastructure. But I think for a lot of us in this space, we're seeing that, there's going to be a lot more work that's going to be needed to close the divide, really working with individuals on the ground. And that's where having a boots on the ground core becomes so impactful to be able to address that need. Through our program, just the national scale piece, there's access to resources. I live in a small town in southern Ohio. I used to work in local government for many years. Even though I was, pretty plugged into sort of national networks, you often can feel like you're working alone in a small community. And we certainly feel like there's impact and value in sort of sharing best practices, sharing knowledge. And so our members are able to take the resources that we bring through our partnerships with, folks like Land O'Lakes, Comcast, as well as some of our nonprofit and strategic partners, groups like the Center on Rural Innovation or Partners for Rural Impact, all sorts of different groups that are out there doing great work. We love to, share the knowledge across the core. So whether they're serving in, rural Idaho or eastern Pennsylvania, they have access to those resources, the grants that are available, understanding of where the issues are trending. We talk about bridging divides. Really, just the diversity of our core and that national expansion gives us the opportunity to bring people together from all sorts of different community types. I know that we tend to sort of lump community types together as like rural or urban, but anyone that's lived in a rural community knows that, if you've seen one rural community, you've seen one rural community. There's a ton of diversity in community types and lived experiences across this country. And this is just a great way for folks who are working on the ground to get exposure to other individuals and other communities who are, maybe doing things differently. And then strengthening connection. I love the stat that Becky shared about our Minnesota alumni. I have that shared lived experience of strengthening my connection to my hometown through national service, and I'm a big believer in the transformative role that national service can provide and sort of tying people, connecting people to the places that they're serving, especially when they're serving places that they already have an affinity for. So we're a big believer that this work can help strengthen those ties to communities that really could benefit from having people wishing to be rooted and stay in those places. And so, let's talk about state partnerships. This has been something that's been really exciting for us this past year. We've had a few good case studies, and we're really building on those in the year to come. And we'd love to continue to expand beyond that. So the three that we have, the first one we have is Illinois. So we work with their state broadband initiative through the Illinois Broadband Lab, which is a partnership, with the State Broadband Office and University of Illinois Extension. Right now we have 9 members placed in different regions across the state. They're getting the same sort of training development through us that all of our members get, but they also have that extra layer of connection through those state offices. What I'll say too is that, what's nice about these state partnerships is that, we build all of our host site relationships really in an organic, incremental way. And so, we're big believers that the folks on the ground at the state level or the local or regional level, they know where the needs are greatest, and where the opportunity is the greatest. And so we really love having these partnerships because we're able to distribute members in a much more informed way and in a much more scaled way that can help bring the impact across the state. The next one we have is a little different. It's through the University of Idaho Extension. So the University of Idaho Extension wanted to place 10 members across the state, each serving with a branch of extension. I think this is actually a really awesome model. Most states have pretty widely distributed extension programs that are touching a lot of different localities. It's a great way to, again, distribute capacity across the state in sort of a wide net sort of fashion. And then the last one we have is through the state of Massachusetts. This is with the Massachusetts Broadband Institute, which is their state broadband office. And similar to Illinois and Idaho, it's an opportunity to spread members across the state. In Massachusetts, we have 15. They are serving in a wide range, so a little different from the other 2 case studies in that they have members placed in nonprofits, regional government, city government, healthcare providers. So they're really, leaning into that intersectionality and getting us to focus our recruitment and placement efforts where there are those opportunities across sectors. And similar to, the other 2, just given that large cohort or sub-cohort of our program, they're able to get, much more focused training with the state partner to help them be effective, even more effective in their communities. So those are the three state partnerships that we have. And we're almost finished with the slides, and we can open up to questions and discussion. But just so you know kind of how we're thinking about our growth and expansion and how this program functions, the community partnerships, that's really, I think, where a lot of this discussion comes in, is where are the host sites, the nonprofits or public agencies that where the need is the greatest in your state? Who are those organizational partners that we could be working with and reaching out to? Right now, we've been really focusing our geographic reach in areas like Appalachia, but also the upper Midwest, so Wisconsin, Minnesota, North and South Dakota, and have new host sites, and 3 of those 4 I just mentioned this next year. But then we also have organizational partnerships. So these might be the other agencies or nonprofits on the ground who have good curriculum, have good best practices, have good things for us to be learning. We have right now, 100 plus this coming year. We're going to have 100 plus folks joining our core that we'll be gathering together at an orientation, a winter training institute. We would love to have them receive some of those that curriculum and those best practices. It's a great opportunity for other organizations to expand their reach just by educating our core members who are distributed across the country. And then funding the gap. So, the way this program works, the reason we're able to do so much more with the stipends and the training and development is that we take our AmeriCorps grant that we receive and we leverage it. So for every $1 of AmeriCorps funding, we bring in 2 additional dollars to support that. And those $2 come through philanthropic support. So the partners I mentioned earlier, we have Comcast, Land O'Lakes, U.S. Bank, and more to come. And we've had more over the years. But we also ask our host sites to contribute to the cost of this work. And so we do have a host site fee. We try to adjust that or scale it to need. For some of our host sites, our fee, which we set at $35,000 a member. For some host sites, that is a pretty economical and affordable way to get the capacity they need. Especially a lot of our state partnerships. That's usually where we start, and it's worked over the past year. But we know for some of our local partners, the smaller nonprofits in rural communities or in other places, that can be a real barrier, and we try to scale that to need and leverage philanthropic support to do that. So that can be national philanthropic support, but we also look at opportunities for community foundations, regional partners who have an interest in supporting these nonprofits or these initiatives in those communities, and they can help fund that gap so that we can keep our program sustainable. And then just so you know our program timeline, as we're really gearing up for the next program year, which starts this coming fall in September of 2024. We will have an orientation that will be a week-long training intensive. We do a winter training institute, as I've mentioned. They'll be in their sites doing their work, and then we graduate them at the end of July. So we're getting ready to graduate this year's cohort. As I mentioned, we are growing. We have a ton of demand this year. We do have a lot of host sites that we're talking to in Minnesota already. But if there's, we're happy to connect offline about where those are, who we're talking to for that. But as far as the statewide partnership goes, we would love to talk to this, to you all about what that could look like. Obviously, for this year, it might be hard to do a large cohort, just given where we are in the timeline. But we do recruit locally, so the sooner we get started on that, we love to get started on recruitment in the fall. As early as September, October, and that way we can get as much of a runway as possible to ensure that we're really reaching, especially those hard-to-reach populations, folks who want to serve in smaller communities. Those are going to take more time and more outreach. And so, starting these conversations now is really helpful to get to a good place to make that happen. So I think that's that our last slide.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, happy to open the floor to questions, comments. How we could help you all sort of progress this conversation and make it happen in Minnesota.
Questions? How frequently do people do more than one round of the cycle? Is it a continuous thing? People really enjoy it and they do it over and over and over again, or is it a one-timer? Or what's the?
We have a lot of returning host sites, and we also have a lot of members who do 2 terms. We've had some that have done 3 terms, one that might potentially do 4 terms. But yeah, no, we have a lot of repeat customers, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, so the program originally was a 2-year fellowship program. We decided, a lot of our members were actually getting hired on by their host sites and, finding job opportunities. That's not rare to us. We've had members at Net Inclusion that got jobs while they were networking. So it's a good problem to have. So we made the service year a 1-year service year, but as Becky said, a lot of our members come back for a second or more years. They can get 2 education awards. So beyond that, they're just serving for the stipend, but a lot of our members come back for that education award. And then to the other part of the house on host sites, we are building a lot of return host sites, which we like because we know that this work isn't a silver bullet, one and done kind of situation. If this is something that really fills a capacity need, and again, I want to emphasize the talent retention piece, recruitment and retention piece, because as someone that worked in local government, I often was very cognizant and aware in a rural community of the need to leverage my work in the Regional Planning Commission as a way to get that next generation or that new generation, not even just young folks, but other folks in the community to be plugged in as civic sector leaders. And so it's a great way to be a returning host site, to have that opportunity to be available to individuals in your community to serve and develop that pipeline for the future.
I have a question. Hi, Tyler. This is Eni. We had a meeting a while back through Global Entrepreneurship Week Minnesota.
Yes.
And I actually had the honor to serve 2 terms with AmeriCorps. And one of the things that I saw was that a lot of these fledgling organizations needed support as far as training on managing employees, conflict resolution, those types of things. Does this program have any type of support for the managers? Just because I know, the participants are always amazing. They typically do what they're supposed to do, but I know that there was a lot of, conflict with, some of these less organized organizations not really having that.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So part of the cost of our program is exactly that. We have a team that Becky helps lead, a program officer. So every member has a program officer directly, working with them on a regular basis, who is also a point of contact for the host sites. We also just hired an alum from our program as a community partnerships manager, who's going to be able to support the program officers on the host site side as well, just ensuring that their needs are met, that we have clear communication channels for them to reach out to if there are challenges around project management, conflict resolution, organizational development, leadership development, those kinds of things. Absolutely, we do have that. And Becky, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I was going to add, we do an orientation specifically for host sites at the beginning of the term. And then as program officers, we touch base with them regularly. We touch base with the members monthly and the host sites typically quarterly. And, we're always available. So not that we know everything and have all the answers, but sometimes, just having another set of eyes and another perspective can help mitigate some of those issues if they come up. I appreciate that answer, and thank you for serving with AmeriCorps.
Absolutely.
So one quick question I had is you had the model, like I think Illinois was one where you're working with the state broadband office. Like, what does that model typically look like? Is that the state gets X amount of resources and then deploys them in communities they see fit, or
Yeah.
how does that all come together?
Absolutely. So one thing I should have mentioned, and this kind of ties into the last question about sort of the what we provide in terms of capacity, is that all of these members are on our payroll, and we do all of the grant compliance work. So if you've ever worked on an AmeriCorps grant, you probably know how challenging it can be. And so rather than sort of burdening our local partners with that challenge, we carry that. We carry that capacity for them. And that's one way that it's kind of a turnkey service. And so at the statewide partnerships, the way it works, it's streamlined even more. We tend to have a contract with that state partner. So in the case of Illinois, for instance, if you have 10 members, they will contract with us at $35,000 per member. And then we will work with them on identifying what the host sites look like, where they're going to be, where they're going to be placed. And so then we partner with them on that. But it's just one contract with that state office and us. And that way the host sites, the localities, they don't have to get into contracting and add to sort of that administrative burden. And that's how we've structured it so far.
I have a curiosity. You said $35,000 for the participant or the fellowship. How do you get people into the program? That seems low for the work they're doing. Do you have a problem incentivizing people into the program? Like, how do you do the recruitment?
Yeah, so again, I think there are a lot of people who are interested in national service. They understand, this isn't, it's not a job per se, it's a service opportunity. And if you're interested in national service, I would encourage you to look at the opportunities out there and what they offer. And I think that when people scan that landscape, they see that, a lot of these national service programs are paying, $16,000, $17,000, maybe $18,000 for a service year. And so I think we get a lot just, again, from being able to offer more of a stipend, which we're able to do by leveraging those other funding channels. And I think that's probably the biggest opportunity to sort of boost recruitment. The other thing I would say is, what's challenging for us, and it's challenging because, this is, as a national program, it's a challenge, is that we know that cost of living varies dramatically from place to place. And so for a lot of our smaller communities, $33,000 is actually probably at or above median household income. I know in the community I live in, that would exceed a good percentage of the households in our community. So it's actually a pretty good opportunity for somebody who's already in the community, or somebody that's graduating college that wants an opportunity to serve. Or in the case of Tim, we're really interested in growing this sub-cohort of retirees who, they're financially more established. They want to move back to their hometown, or they're settling in to a smaller community, and it's a great way for them to give back and to sort of have a badge to wear through national service, but it's not sort of a make or break proposition. So that's kind of the short of it. I will say that, like, my goal is to always try to increase that. This is where we are right now, just sort of leveraging the philanthropic revenue that we have with the host site revenue. This is where we can sort of land at the moment. So just so you all know, full transparency, we only get of that our members full cost. So this is like program officers, overhead, training. It's about $67,000 a member. And so we get about $23,000 of that from AmeriCorps. So the rest of that we're making up through host site fees and philanthropy. So we're trying to sort of marry all of these things together while continuing to raise the bar in terms of what we can offer our members to make it attractive for recruitment and retention.
Other questions for Taylor or Becky? So obviously one of the things we can think about, particularly as a recommendation from a task force, is, could this augment the office in some cases? Particularly we talk about 2025, right? So, and then how would that get funded, et cetera? Those are all the things we can debate internally, but I figured this was kind of an interesting way, particularly in communities where there's underserved or unserved or underserved, and then they need help to figure out how to put grant proposals together and get funding. So this is something to keep in mind. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say thank you. Our program has done and been a part of Minnesota and this process for a very long time. So it definitely holds a special place in our heart, and we hope that we can continue that relationship and more. So thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all. Appreciate your interest and attention and having us back, and always happy to come back and be a part of any discussion. As Becky mentioned, to continue serving Minnesota. We kind of view it as like our birthplace of this program, just with the support from Land O'Lakes, some of the alumni we've had serving rural communities, tribal communities, urban communities across the state. You guys have been a wonderful partner, both at the local and state level, so we hope that we can continue to grow that partnership.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you, Taylor. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, take care, y'all. Have a good rest of the week.
Yep.
Bye.
Okay, so that is pretty much the bulk of the agenda. Any other open business, any other things that we need to discuss, or anybody have any comments? Anybody online that may not be on the task force, that any comments you want to make? Okay, not hearing any. I don't see any hands up, so thank you everybody for the time. Appreciate the engagements. For those of you in the room, lunches are available here. There are box lunches. You're more than welcome to stay here. We have this room till 1. It's just that, in case people had to leave, we want to make sure you had something to eat. So that's available here. One thing I will say about lunches going forward, and Sabrina and I talked about it a little bit, is because it's hard to figure out, as of the moment, usually the Office of Broadband will pay for lunches to be available, but when we've met in the past, we've always had too much lunch for the people that are available. So we try to get more accurate counts going forward and not necessarily have lunch available depending on the situation. So if we have a host site like we did today, no big deal. We'll kind of work with that host site to make it happen. But we will let you know in advance whether there's going to be lunch available or not, and